So why teach spelling? Well, spelling enhances the development of reading because it teaches patterns in reading, the patterns in spelling, the meaning of specific words, and it helps with the reinforcement in the brain. Phonemic awareness is where spellers realize that spoken words are made up of sounds that are represented in print by letters. You've seen a lot of this already in your book, but this is just kind of a general. Students must be able to pronounce the letters correctly and discriminate them clearly in order to represent the sounds in print correctly. So, again, dialects are going to affect pronunciation and spelling. There is a video here if you feel like you aren't getting enough of an understanding of phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and phonics. There's a video below. I believe most of you spoken to in the introduction, and I feel like you have a really good knowledge of this, so I'm not going to spend a long time on it. If you do need more information, the book gives a ton, but if you're more of an auditory learner, there's a video here you can click on in your notes that will give you a more thorough, in-depth look into those things. So instruction in spelling should be to heighten sensitivity to a particular sound in a word, the position of the sound in the word, and then promote the spelling by figuring out what the positions are. Really teaching the position of the sound in the word, the teacher is going to say the word and ask the students to say it after her. The student needs to identify if it's the initial, medial, or final sound. You do this a lot in kindergarten by giving the word, what's the first sound in cat? What's the last sound in cat? What's the medial sound? Ah. Orthography refers to the rules that control how a word is spelled. Formal spelling instruction should include teaching the reader how to translate the print word into its spoken equivalent. It also needs to establish a sense of spelling rule frequency and reliability of those letter patterns. I'm going to teach you some of the spelling rules in the Barton system. Really, the Barton system, Lindemood Bell, and Wilson tend to have the best spelling rules because they're more thorough as to when you can apply them. Our basic old Basel spelling rules do not apply as frequently as the rules in those Orton-Gillingham-based approaches. There are lots of different, and understanding of syllables is important to both spelling and reading. Really, the different syllable types you will see are very important into learning those spelling rules because it really helps with the morphology and understanding the root word. Morphology is the smallest unit of language. That really means having the roots, the prefixes, and the suffixes are all important in understanding what a word means. Again, you do this in, say, 2nd or 3rd grade when you create word part books. Some of you do it in 1st and 2nd. Word origins are really important for students to learn. There are 14 different spellings for the sh sound. So it's really, we can understand why it's so difficult for them to understand. So understanding the origin of sounds in words can really help them understand the meaning of the word. I told you about how spelling rules need to be taught. These are some spelling rules from the Barton system. The floss rule is a rule for doubling. Really, if it's a one-syllable word that ends in F, L, or S after a short vowel, you double the final F, L, or S. The rabbit rule is the rule for doubling the middle consonant. If there's one middle consonant after a short vowel sound in a two-syllable word, the middle consonant is doubled. The doubling rule is the rule for doubling the final consonant. If a base word ends in one short vowel followed by one consonant, the final consonant is doubled before adding a vowel suffix. The dropping rule, that's the rule for dropping the final E. If a base word ends in final E, the E is dropped before adding a suffix that begins with a vowel. And finally, the changing rule. That's the rule for changing the final Y. If a base word ends in one consonant before the final Y, the Y is changed to I before adding a suffix that does not begin with I. Understanding these rules doesn't just help in spelling, it also helps in being able to sound out words in reading. Another section of spelling and reading that really need to be taught are the confusing words, the homophones, the homographs, the homonyms. All of those need to be explicitly taught to students as well. The websites here just give you some great visuals to assist students with teaching those skills. Really, spelling should be taught in connection with reading. Spelling words that are the best are the ones chosen directly from what the students are currently reading. Spelling across the U.S. Has changed, and actually it's changed across the whole world. Some of the best spelling systems are the systems where the student is not required to do a spelling test, but either spelling sentences or a spelling paragraph, because the words are all directly within their context. It requires punctuation and grammar and not just the spelling of words. Here are some different ways that teachers across the U.S. have used to help students study or prepare for spelling. A lot of different senses are used in here, so feel free to check them out and read them through. Research has also taught us that teaching spelling through memorization is not effective with most students. Really, you need to teach spelling in a way where there's instruction on the patterns. And this instruction needs to be explicit for them to know when and how to use these patterns correctly. One great way to do this is through mini lessons. When you're teaching vowel digraphs, you should be sure that each vowel digraph is taught separately in a mini lesson that's multisensory. Here's an example of a quick lesson plan for teaching a specific pattern. This week I'm also giving you a lesson plan for centers to teach writing and spelling within the centers in a multisensory way. Please be sure to read that over, or at least skim it over, so that you understand what the different centers involve. If you're looking to do multisensory practice of patterns and sounds, two of the most traditional ones that work are cover, copy, compare procedure, where the student points to the word on a paper while the teacher says it out loud. Then the student says the word while pointing to it again. Next, the student covers the word with paper, then they write it, and uncover the word and compare the two. Simultaneous oral spelling procedure is when an adult reads a word out loud, the student repeats or echoes the word out loud. The student names the letter out loud while skywriting those letters. The student names the letter out loud while writing them on paper. Then the student reads the spelling word out loud to check for accuracy. For both of these, immediate feedback and correction is important. When we're talking about orthography, we're really referring to the rules that govern how words are represented in writing. The speller's task is to determine how the phonemes of oral language are transcribed into graphemes. As a result, students have less difficulty figuring out how to read words such as moon or fruit or chew. I'm going to focus on chapters 8 and 14, which do a lot with teaching spelling, because it is really important for reading fluency and for writing. Spelling serves as the foundation for reading. Spelling has frequent, reliable patterns and rules that need to be taught in order to both read and spell correctly. It can't be taught by rote memorization. Effective spelling instruction is engaging, provoking, exciting. It does not distract from the content of writing or reading, but it enhances it. So be sure you're teaching it. There's a lot that we talked about as far as spelling around the world, what other countries do. In England, they use a whole closed passage and have students write the entire passage or paragraph with the spelling words in it, and that passage is directly from their current reading. They tend to have better spelling than the United States that uses repetition and lists. Canada is very similar to England. They use a lot of paragraphs. You're going to watch a video about a spelling technique that's using specific skills called the Spelling Bad Blues. Important things to note from your text. On page 207 and page 258, a teacher's phonics and phonemic awareness knowledge will influence how well students learn to read. Sounds have three properties: the place of articulation, the flow of the air stream, and the activity of the vocal cords. So students should be taught to recognize all of those properties in letter sounds. That's why we use the mirror, in order for them to see where their tongue is, where the position is, and to see those properties. Spelling serves as a foundation for reading. It provides a mean of communication, and even if not rightly or fairly, is used by society to judge one's level of literacy and their intelligence. We don't want students to just be fluent. We want them to be active, interacting, sense-seeking readers with accurate automatic word recognition skills and fluency. What does early writing instruction look like? We don't have a lot of time to go into this, but I am going to give you a few quick examples. For example, this is actually not dyslexia. Some people might assume it is. It's what we call left-handed syndrome, which means that the person who wrote this started on the wrong side of their paper because they're left-handed. It can be confused for dysgraphia or dyslexia because it's the mirror image or reversal of the writing. I have here a bunch of curriculum-based measurements, CBMs, for writing assessments. You should give these about 3 times a year to all students to determine if their writing is improving. They're nationally norm-based, so you can state to parents where they fall. I always state with parents not only how many words read correctly that they fall in, so say a student's writing 28 words correctly, but I also make sure to tell them what their accuracy is in those writing words. So the CBM is just a line sheet. It's given in 3 minutes, 1 minute to think about the prompt, 3 minutes to write. It's administered fairly easily. You can give it to a whole class or one-on-one. Your total words is the total word written, which is norm-based. The next piece of it is going to be the total words spelled correctly. That is not norm-based, but it will be on there because we do have to know exactly based on their writing what percentage of that writing is correct word sequence or correct writing sequence. And that is norm-based as well. So that's going to give you what percent of everything they wrote actually had correct punctuation, correct spelling. If you've never given a writing assessment, be sure to grab me on our week when we have our interactive, and I can explain to you how to actually score one. This is an exact explanation of how to score a writing assessment for correct word sequence, but we don't have time to get into it here. There's a free online screener. We did the Handwriting Without Tears screener. I'm going to run through real quick in a few minutes content area writing. Really what I want you to focus on here are there are many ways to learn to write. There's writing to reinforce concepts, writing to inform or report, and writing to reflect. 6-trait writing you will get if you decide to do some of the websites. You'll get a little more on that. Cubing, possible sentences, writing roulette, and squiggle writing I'm going to explain really quick. So I'm not going to go through 6-trait because that is in one of your websites that you can review on your own. I am going to go through some of the others, though, that aren't as easy. One of them being editing. Really what we've learned from research is it's actually good to not edit with a red pen on any student's work. What you should do instead are write above the work or in a separate paper or have writing conferences with them to identify one specific area that they need to work on. For example, COPS. That's capitalization, organization, punctuation, and spelling. You would use this as outline for students. You'd have COPS written on a paper, and you'd tell them how many errors you found in capitalization. So you'd put a 5 there. You'd tell them how many errors you found in organization, punctuation, and spelling. For younger kids, you would just use one of these. For older kids, you could use all of them. That way, they would then have to go into their writing and find those mistakes and run them past you. It allows for kids to be able to feel creative and not feel like their writing is constantly being assessed. So what is cubing? Cubing is a writing technique where you can do a lot of different things. You can describe, you can compare, you can associate, and you can analyze, apply, and argue for or against the specific thing. For example, this is on Holes, the book, and what they're doing is associating it, applying it, analyzing it, arguing against it, describing it, and comparing it to another book. You use a cube that the students would create to do all of these things. It's just a fun way for kids to organize their thoughts and their writing. Possible sentences. What that is you select very specific sentences or words, and you have the students either create a sentence or a paragraph, depending on age level, with those words. There are a lot of examples here, but this is one of them. Writing roulette. What that is a student is going to begin with a phrase or prompt, and as the writing is passed on, it's continually added to. We don't have much time, so I'm not going to go over the rest of them, but you are welcome to look through these and get some ideas on how to teach writing from all of the different biographies, autobiographies in our PowerPoint this week. Double entry journals are some of the favorites for kids. You can use comics and have them write about the comics. Found poetry is another favorite. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the characteristics of dyslexia and dysgraphia on our next week. So, when we discuss assistive technology next week, we'll continue to add those things in and talk